With the release of these two films, it is the end of the dreadful Sony Spider-Man universe that included such gems as Morbius and Madam Web. But these two are available now on Netflix after their brief theatrical run last year. Let's talk about Venom: The Last Dance and Kraven the Hunter. Hey guys, Dan here. This is Dan Reviews It. Welcome to my movie reviews for the end of the Sony Spider-Man Universe, Kraven the Hunter, and Venom: The Last Dance. Now, I'm not positive if the Sony Spider-Man Universe includes the old Spider-Man movies with Tobey Maguire or not. I think they don't, at least in this sort of in-universe kind of thing, because they sort of are attaching these to the Marvel movies like a little bit. Anyway, the short version of this is that they could not put Spider-Man in any of these terrible movies. And that maybe hurt them, or maybe they were just bad movies to begin with. But Disney and Sony reached a deal years ago because Disney really wanted the Spider-Man character to be in the Avengers movies and the MCU type stuff. And so they struck up a deal. Sony owns a piece of those movies, No Way Home, and anytime, Spider-Man appears in one of the Avengers movies or one of the side movies, like I think he was in Doctor Strange 2 or something. But in any event, so Sony owns like a little piece of that. But for whatever reason, that meant that Sony could not use Spider-Man in any of these movies. So there's like little threads, like Madam Web, they kept talking about Spider-Man, but of course he didn't show up. Venom has, little pieces of Spider-Man. In fact, one of the recent Marvel movies did have an end credit scene. I think it might have been No Way Home, had an end credit scene with Eddie Brock, who plays, who is Venom, at a bar, and we see that scene incorporated into The Last Dance. So, as an example. But for the most part, yes, these Sony Spider-Man movies have been terrible. And I don't think it's because Spider-Man wasn't in them. I mean, maybe that hurts, but I think it's just because they are written poorly. They are produced even worse. Madam Web and Morbius, for me, are Fs. We will see if Venom: The Last Dance and Kraven the Hunter can rise above that. I think the highest grade I've given for this crop of movies is one of the Venoms I gave like a C+ to. That's the best I can give for these movies. They're not good. But all right, before we get to any more in the weeds with these movies, let me welcome you back to the channel. If you are a subscriber to Dan Reviews It, thank you so much for that. Love when you guys return and check out my movie reviews. And if you are not, please consider subscribing and clicking that notification bell down below there. Would love to have you aboard in that capacity. Or you could just like this video, comment below. That stuff, of course, helps the channel as well. And at the end of this, I will link my Madam Web review. Not good. It is definitely a fail, but you can hear all the reasons why. So, all right, let's talk about these. I'm essentially not, usually when I do like multiple movies in one video, I do one movie, then I talk about the other movie, and then I talk about the third movie, whatever. No, I'm just going to talk about these movies together because they have all the same problems, which is a similar, problem with all of the Sony Spider-Man movies. But all right, so the tagline or the log line or whatever for Venom: The Last Dance. Eddie Brock and Venom, that's Tom Hardy, must make a devastating decision as they're pursued by a mysterious military man and alien monsters from Venom's home world. All right, that already sounds vague and boring. All right, then you've got Kraven the Hunter. This one's a little more in-depth because this is an origin story. The last movie of the Sony Spider-Man universe is an origin story for a character that we've never really heard of. All right, that makes sense. Kraven's complex relationship with his ruthless father, Nikolai Kravinoff, starts him down a path of vengeance with brutal consequences, motivating him to become not only the greatest hunter in the world, but also one of the most feared. And this one, I don't quite understand the casting for this movie at all, because you're diving in with two people who have already been in the Marvel universe. And this is, even though it's not an MCU movie, it's technically still a Marvel movie. And since we've established that Venom is in the same universe as the MCU and all of that, there's already characters played by these people. So as Kraven, or as Sergei Kravinoff, you have Aaron Taylor Johnson, So he was in Age of Ultron. Um, and then you also have Russell Crowe as Nikolai Kravenov. And Russell Crowe was in one of the recent Thor movies. But that's not all. Venom did the same thing. So Chiwetel Ejiofor, who appeared in both of the Doctor Strange movies, appears in this as a completely different character, Strickland. So obviously, all that went out the window. And look, I understand Robert Downey Jr. is coming back to the next whatever Avengers or something as Doctor Doom. All right, I get that. And obviously, Chris Evans, they made a big joke about that in Deadpool and Wolverine. He was in Fantastic Four, and then, of course, later he was Captain America. But I don't know. It just seems like, what are we doing here? Like, when Chris Evans was in the Fantastic Four, it wasn't a Marvel owned. It was Marvel owned, but it wasn't Disney owned. It was Fox owned, and there's these odd whatever business dealings and parallels and perpendiculars too, with who's playing what or whatever. But it seems odd that since we've established that Venom is in the same universe as the MCU, why is Chiwetel Ejiofor in this movie when he's already in Doctor Strange? All right, but you know what? Those things are the least of these movies' problems. Like Morbius and Madam Web and the other Venom movies before it, these movies are written horribly. Now, it is interesting that all three Venom movies have had different directors. So, the gal that directed this movie, Kelly Marcel, she is a co-writer on the other two Venom movies. So she's been a part of the Venom universe for a couple of years. And she had a hand in writing this as well, alongside Tom Hardy and Todd McFarlane, noted comic author. So why is this so terrible? Look, maybe Tom Hardy's not a good writer. I don't know, but if you've got Todd McFarlane as a co-writer on this movie, you would think at some point he would say, "This is really bad, you guys." But anyway, so Kelly Marcel co-wrote the first two, and now she's in the director's seat for this one. But Venom has had three different directors for these three movies, and that is usually a bad sign because you're not going to have sort of the consistency of character and of certain other elements of the film. I don't think it matters for the Venom series because it's so terrible. But look, their shtick is just getting old. This is more of a comedy, an intentional comedy. Like Madam Web was a comedy for different reasons, but this is like an intentional comedy. And while that has served it well for parts of those first couple movies, the shtick is really wearing thin here. The comedic elements don't land at all. And I didn't care what happened to the characters. Like in the third movie, by now you would hope that I cared about what was going on with these characters, and I just didn't. I wanted it to end. I wanted them both to just die. It's not good. Kraven the Hunter actually is slightly better than this, and here's why. I think maybe because it's an origin story, this has something to do with it, but I think the story is better in Kraven the Hunter. I can't say that I ever really cared that much about the character per se, and I don't like Aaron Taylor Johnson for the most part as an actor. I know he is like top in the running to be the next James Bond. I really hope that doesn't happen. I think he can be good in the right part. Like I think he was great in Kick-Ass as that was 15 years ago. He's much younger. But I didn't like him in Age of Ultron, and I didn't like him in the Godzilla movie he was in. And here he's okay. But the reason this one I think rises a little bit above The Last Dance is that I think some of the action sequences are better. And maybe slightly more surprising, just a little bit. Venom: The Last Dance is very predictable. Kraven the Hunter is predictable too, but because I didn't know anything about the character, I guess there were elements to it that I did enjoy. Enjoy might be a strong word, but didn't hate, based on the fact that I didn't necessarily know what was going to happen, or how he was going to become sort of, this revered hunter. The CGI is terrible, though, more specifically for Kraven than it is for Venom. Venom, the CGI is on par with the other two movies, which is also not great, but it's not terrible. Kraven the Hunter had some pretty lackluster CGI sequences, but some okay action. And I guess I cared a little bit more about the character than I did with Venom. But I am so glad that these garbage movies are done now. Sony has given us perhaps the worst movie series of all time with these terrible, terrible movies. Now, again, if this includes the Tobey Maguire movies, that changes things. But I don't think it does. I think it is all based around the Spider-Man villains that they had access to when they did not have access to Spider-Man himself as a character. And so that begat all of these just piss poor movies. So look, we'll end it there. No need to belabor the point, but these are both in the line of garbage films, but neither of them is an F. So Morbius and Madam Web still, hold the lowest bar for this series with that. But I will leave Venom: The Last Dance with a D, and Kraven the Hunter I give a D plus. So different shades of terrible, but you can see both of them if you're interested and you want to complete the lineup on Netflix. And I will say, I would rather, even though it is a much worse movie, I would rather watch Madam Web again than either of these. Madam Web, at least you could do like a drinking game with. Madam Web is so bad that it does sort of veer into that so bad it's good, because I couldn't believe that they even made it. And again, I'll put my review here at the tag. But anyway, I would rather watch that than these two again. So take that for what it's worth too. All right, thank you so much for watching Dan Reviews It, and I'll see you next time, hopefully with a better flick. Bye.